Welcome to Your Voice to the World. I'm Eddie Pinero, speaker, filmmaker, and storyteller, teaming up with Terrence McMahon, retired CEO and best-selling author. Having built multi-million-dollar businesses and created lifestyle brands enjoyed by millions around the world, we've established a blueprint to do more and become more. Now we're joining forces to inspire you to share your voice and build the business and lifestyle you've always dreamed of. Welcome to the Your Voice to the World podcast. I'm Eddie Pinero.
I'm Terrence McMahon.
And we are here to help you share your voice
and build your business.
And today, before we get into the amazing book we have, quick note, to say thank you for season 1 and how much we appreciate you guys watching and being a part of this community. We want to do something a little different. And so we are giving away a Shure SMB microphone. This is a mic that I use to record every Your World Within video. It's the mic that Michael Jackson recorded Thriller with. It's a very versatile mic, and it's an awesome mic. And so we want to give it away, and we're going to do that as soon as we hit 150 reviews. So all you have to do to enter the contest is to go to the Apple Podcast app and leave a review under Your Voice to the World, and you're automatically entered. We're going to then shuffle all the names, pull one out, and give it away.
The reviews are big time important, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm starting to learn all about that. The algorithm will point this podcast to other like-minded people, and you also get a chance to win a killer Mac Daddy mic.
Absolutely.
So cool.
That's the name of the game. And we get so many nice messages from you guys every day about the podcast. So, wanna give back and get everyone involved. So, on that note, what do you think?
There's going to be a link to do that in the notes.
Well, actually, you can't link. So you just go like you're listening to our podcast, the same page with all the episodes. Just scroll right to the bottom, and there's a spot to leave, a certain amount of stars and a quick write-up. And it's got to be 5. And then you're good to go. So,
all right.
Let's talk about this week's book.
All right, we got Jerry Weintraub, the famous producer, actor, most famous probably as an agent. When I Stop Talking, You'll Know I'm Dead. And it's useful stories from one of the world's most persuasive men. And this book is showing up as a self-help book, but it's really a book of stories of how this guy rose from the Bronx, didn't have any money, didn't really know anything, and he ended up learning how to become super persuasive, to create massive momentum for his brand, and to build a huge empire. He's worth almost a third of $1 billion. He died at 77 years old, I think a couple years ago. Awesome guy.
Yeah.
He produced The Karate Kid. He produced Oceans 12 and 13.
11's the only one I know, but I'm not.
And 11, yeah.
How many are there?
I think there's 3.
That's awesome.
They're all good. The sequel. But there's good takeaways. These are top takeaways that Eddie and I are trying to give you for a book that you wouldn't read otherwise. Hopefully it compels you to read it. This is a great book, super entertaining. But it starts off, he was a little kid in the Bronx, and he didn't have any money. His parents had no money. His dad was actually a traveling salesman, sold jewels, and he noticed that the dry cleaner, people would come from the train where he lived, and they'd pick up the dry cleaning every day. So he approached the dry cleaner and asked him if he could deliver the clothing for him to the people. So he ended up getting accounts and delivering clothing. And then he noticed also the same people tended to get their laundry done. So he also cut a deal with the laundry guy. And as the story goes, he started working, both of which only paid him on tips. So he created his own industry, became an entrepreneur. He was like 13 years old. And he has a first early tip that he says he used to get the clothes together, but he'd deliver them in 2 different trips. So he'd get 2 tips. He says never get paid once for doing something twice.
Yeah.
And he kind of he created his business. He pitched the ideas to the business owners, and he had a business right out of the gate. And years later, he became Jerry Weintraub.
Which it's cool because he had that story is kind of the roots to everything throughout the book is that. It's just a different version of that. It's that blown up, that more expansive, like, way of looking at things. But that's what it's about. During that story when he's like, I looked at the world differently. Like he started to see that. He started to see life as opportunity, and like you can move and shake if you start looking at the pieces, the players, and the opportunities a certain way. And that's everything. Super relatable.
He turned nothing into something.
Right.
Like that's one of our kind of fun little jokes of like, how do you make something out of nothing, literally out of thin air?
Yeah.
In the early story, the second story I like is his dad was a traveling salesperson. And he was overseas and he found this large raw gem. I think it was a sapphire, 270 gram sapphire that sits in the Smithsonian to this day. And normally you would cut that up and make a lot of little sapphires out of it and make a good payday. But his dad had the idea to package it as this long. He put a brand on it. He called it the Star of Artaban. Mm-hmm. And he positioned it as the star that was carried by the fourth wise man that never made it to the manger. They put a whole story into it, and then whenever he went into a town, he instead of just showing up to sell jewelry, he would make a big publicity pitch for this Star of Adavan, and he'd have a Brinks truck and armed guards, and he created a big production out of it because he was a showman. And he packaged this thing, and it became this famous jewel. And of course, every time he got there, there'd be tons of press, and he would stimulate sales for the jewelry store that he visited.
Yeah.
So that kind of got him an idea that would later be used to package the great celebrities in show business.
Yeah, I would argue that's the theme throughout the book. I mean, or one of the main three. And it's incredible to think about how that translates into what you're doing. You take a pair of shoes, they're not worth much. You put a Nike check on them, they're worth a lot, right? Everything is packaging, branding, marketing. And so, you can kind of look at like anything you're doing. Like I look at Your World Within, the brand that I created years ago. It's nothing. Like everything starts as nothing. Everything starts worthless. Everything starts valueless. And it's your job to visualize it, and then start making moves towards it to bring it to life.
Right.
And you just see him do this tenaciously, like throughout the entire book. It's an important thing. You can't have a business without it. You can't share your voice without it, because to have a business, you got to see an end goal. To share your voice, you have to believe what you're saying, and you have to believe that it's going to impact the lives of others, and then drive towards it. So those theories, like that way of looking at things, is pivotal.
Yeah, you don't always know what it's going to end up being either.
Right.
Remember on the last episode we were talking about what Your World Within is. And it was, ultimately we said it's a feeling. So the business and the brand and the product is actually a feeling, to create a feeling. And, if you think about any form of entertainment, you watch movies and go to concerts and you listen to music because it gives you a feeling. Arguably, and I heard someone talk about this, like that feeling rivals, a drug. Because it changes your brain. When you hear music you like or you see a movie you like, it changes your brain. It releases a chemical of enjoyment. And that's what you've created with your brand. And that's what you might want to create when you're building your message is, what feeling are you trying to produce with your audience? So when people saw the Star of Adavan, they felt a feeling of privilege. Like, oh, we're seeing this unique star. And this packaging was so good, it ended up in the Smithsonian.
Right.
It's in a museum right now. And it was a creation. The guy was creative. He created. He saw something. He had a vision. He created it, and he made it true through his actions.
Yeah, he understood that every step along the way. He understood that perception validates, and so he knew that if he could create the idea or the perception or what he wanted, he thought with the end goal in mind. And we'll talk about different examples, but this is the end result. So how do we make it look like this? And then life just kind of fills in the gaps, you know? Like I'm sure with your agency, I've heard you talk to other agents. I've heard you coaching. It starts with an idea, right? I mean, you didn't have an agency at one point, but you had the idea of one, and you knew there were certain ways of looking at things that would not only help you sustain, but put you ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just being around people that would make that connection possible. a lot of people want to like create this huge business and they have no idea how to do that. So they start trying to knock over this giant domino, meaning this big business, instead of trying to get strategic about how to create a large business. To create a large business, you need to model. The second pillar of M3 is modeling. What model works and who's doing it well?
Yeah.
Like who's got a model right now that has a large, if we're looking at lifestyle friendly, where our own model is, we have a highly digital lifestyle that we can do from anywhere in the world with valuable content and takeaways and ideas that you can turn into money. Just like Jerry turned the, something that didn't exist with people that needed clothing delivered to them to a business.
Right.
And that's the same thing. So to do it, back to the, one of the things I think I did well, as good as anybody, is I got around, I weaseled my way into social circles that gave me access to large, big ideas.
Right.
And then I actually did it in the actual niche. Starting with, finding someone that taught me one skill set that just to close, knocking on doors. I met a guy and I helped him and he helped me. He taught me how to knock on doors. And I met another guy that taught me how to recruit. And I met another guy that taught me how to market.
Right.
And these people always got me into a bigger game. It's almost like the bigger game at Vegas. You go from room to room until you're in the big game.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in business. This guy did it. He's delivering clothes. And then he had the Elvis story. I think it was his big breakthrough was Elvis, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that story is essentially, he had the dream of taking Elvis, on tour.
Hold on a second. Steve, do you know who Elvis is?
Yeah, of course.
How does someone 26 years old know who Elvis is anymore?
I don't know. I actually, it's funny because I actually started listening to some oldies and I got back into Elvis. I've never really listened to his music like that, but I've actually started a new little playlist. He's on it. What's the one I like? Falling in Love. Is that one? That's like a classic. That's like the one I've been on repeat. But yeah, it's actually recent, but yeah, I haven't listened too much.
Yeah, he's Elvis became big right after the Beatles. Because the Beatles were big. Then Elvis came in and Elvis just took over because he was doing something different. I guess that was his algorithm. He wanted to be different. He was definitely not the same because he used to move his body like some TV shows when he let him on. He became big. And then so big that this is right around when movies were being produced. He became a big movie star. He just basically sang in a movie and it would do number one. Right. So that was his path, right? And then and he stopped singing, so he started acting in movies. And one day Jerry woke up and had his vision. He said, Jerry Weintraub presents Elvis Presley at the Madison Square Garden. And that was the beginning of a vision for him to bring Elvis back to big venues, like giant stadiums. He was the first guy to do big stadiums, like he did the Madison Square Garden. But it started with an idea that he could do this for Elvis. And that was just an idea. Had no reason. He didn't know Elvis, didn't know anything about Elvis, but he did his homework. He found out that the Colonel was Elvis's manager, Tom Parker, and Tom Parker ran Elvis's life. He was the Colonel. He used to walk around with a cane, played a lot of roulette, I guess. Called him every day, right? Called him every day, and then found his number, and Tom Parker said, Elvis is doing movies, we're not interested in you. Even if we are interested, we're not interested in you. We don't know you. We have people that do that. A year later, Tom Parker called, gave him a shot.
Yep.
How'd the story go?
Yeah, well, that's essentially his first big break. He says, you can do this if you show up tomorrow at the roulette table with $1 million. And so Jerry, at that point, he's got that first domino knocked down, but now he's got that sort of the monumental task of figuring out how to get $1 million, which back then is way more than $1 million. I don't know what it would be in today's money. But calling people, friends of friends, anyone he can. He finds out there's a guy that owns some radio station. He's a big fan of Elvis. Gets $1 million loan from him. Shows up the next day, and that sort of kicks off everything. But again, it's just representative of him sort of willing things to life, doing things that are continuously outrageous. He makes, or there's calls to the fact that his wife constantly calls him crazy. You know what I mean? Like she's not even on board with his level of thinking. But it's because of that these pieces keep falling into place.
Yeah, I think he didn't have the resources, and one of the things I think that made him so famous and and rich and powerful was he was super persuasive.
Yeah.
So he persuaded some guy he didn't know to give him $1 million.
Elvis fan.
And this was the biggest deal, is Tom Parker didn't do contracts. Everything was on a handshake. So he stroked over a check for $1 million with no contract back then. Because they never did this type of concert before. They never had a venue where they would have a gate and sell T-shirts and all that.
Right.
What year did you say he did that deal for the $1 million in one day?
I'm not sure. I think it's around 1960.
Okay, in the 60s, because I was trying to look up like how much it would be in
How much
today's
would
day.
60?
Try to take a guess, and I'll look it up.
Well, it depends on what your rate of return is, but if you take 4 and put it into 72, that's how long it takes money to double. That's called the law of 72. So at 4%, money doubles every 12 years. So 60 is 40. What is it?
28 million.
60 years? 60 years. It would double about 4 times. So 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16. Maybe 20 million.
It's saying this is just pretty much inflation, but in other words, $1 million in 1960 is equivalent in purchasing power to about 8.6 million in 2020.
8.6. So doubled twice. Doubled 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4. Doubled 3 times.
Just the prospect of getting that much money is insane.
Well, in 24 hours.
I know, from someone that you don't know.
You drop it off at a roulette table to Colonel Tom Parker. Colonel Parker was the master of the handshake. So at the end of the concert, after they did the concert, he didn't know this, but there was cash concessions, and Colonel Parker invited Jerry into a room, and he had 2 suitcases full of cash. And he poured the cash on the table, and Jerry didn't know what it was. It was more money he'd ever seen. And Colonel Parker put his cane in and just cut it down the middle, 50-50.
Yeah.
He got 50, and Colonel Parker and Elvis took 50. So he got more than Elvis. Elvis only got half of 50.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about. Like, you hear how many artists got screwed by their record labels.
Yeah.
Like, we talk all the time now about, like, the one-to-one. You remove the middlemen from the process of creating and reaching your clients and consumers one-to-one. You get all the money, as opposed to just signing a contract and hoping Universal or Sony gives you some,
That's an interesting dialogue here as we look from afar years later, 60 years later. Elvis cuts a deal with this guy he doesn't know to get access to tens of thousands of people, right?
Right.
And ends up getting money out of it, a lot less as a percentage of the take, right? You got 25%. You got half of half. So Elvis gets 25%. Colonel Parker gets 25%. The guy they didn't know who doesn't sing got half. It's like an interesting concept. I know a lot of people that have their businesses and they have a great idea and they have tons of talent, but they won't give away any of their business because they want it all. Right. And that's an interesting challenge sometimes to play with, because you're giving away. Sometimes investors, like basically a venture capitalist says, I'm going to put you in front of a lot of people. I'm taking half. An interesting concept. Like, do you say no?
Well, you got to trust who you're giving it to.
Right.
I mean, that to me is, you can't keep saying no. Like, to grow and to scale, you need people and you need resources at some point. To me, the question is the investment smart? It happened to be a brilliant investment, but it's just sheer luck, essentially. I mean, for Elvis, right?
Yeah. Well, he had the skill. I mean, that might be a different example, but if you look at
sheer luck in terms of who he surrounded himself with.
Right.
Like, they didn't know Jerry Weintraub was going to be an awesome dude. He could have been a clown.
True. And there's a lot of clouns out there. That's it's like the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus stopped performing a couple years ago. Every clown in the world now is cutting deals on the internet saying they're experts. That's where all the clowns went to work.
Right.
Because I see one. I bumped into many of them. It's like, these people are complete clowns. But think about Google. Steve, look up the Google deal, the initial investors for Google.
Okay.
Because that was they had a way, what was Google's initial product? It was search, right?
It was just a search engine.
Search engine, yeah. And they had early investors. So they had this amazing search technology, and they had to give up a fair amount of the company to get it. Which is very scary. If you imagine working your whole life and you give up, a lot. And this is kind of a deviation from this, but it really isn't. You take extreme expertise, like the best message in the world that is kept a secret doesn't do anything. Which I think is sometimes a shame. I guess you got to take some chances.
Got to take risks. Yeah. That's he says that. You talk about that. I did my TED talk on it. if you're not uncomfortable, you're not moving.
Right.
Every step along the way for him was uncomfortable. You know, I'm sure calling people at 3 a.m. for $1 million wasn't comfortable.
Oh my God. Imagine calling somebody you don't even, I mean, out of nowhere. I guess he was calling friends from the neighborhood. Like said, I know you're going to be the guys he was delivering clothes to.
Right.
You're going to be something, kid. Give me a call if you ever need anything. Yeah, I need $1 million.
Mind you, he's $70,000 in debt. He's a nobody.
And 26.
And 26.
He's a kid. Wow. That's gargantuan. But he creates this momentum, which is, you know, the keys to this whole thing is he dreamed big. He did the research. You know, he had this big dream, and he did the research, found out where the kernel was. He was persistent, and then he was persuasive.
He's almost like all of our podcasts up to here. Like he was relentless in his pursuit. He was, you know, you take all these things he could persuade. He used cognitive biases. He told incredible stories. He was just,
I know.
You know, he had a toolbox full of tools.
He kind of put it all together probably through the School of Hard Knocks, you know, because I'm sure he didn't have the training that I think is available. I mean, the things you can learn online. If you just start at podcast number 1 and get to here, you're getting top ideas from great books. You're way ahead of the game if you implement.
Yeah.
Because this is, you know, we talked about the Matthew principle in the last book, right?
Mm-hmm.
To those who have more, 2 books ago, Jordan Peterson, to those who have, more will be given. To those who have nothing, all will be taken. So here's Jerry Weintraub makes this big splash, becomes a millionaire overnight with Elvis. 2 weeks later, he was a millionaire after he cut the deal because he got all the ticket sales, sold out all the arenas.
Isn't there a time when he gets a call from Sinatra? How does that work?
Well, he creates this massive momentum. He's Elvis. He's probably the biggest name in the producing business right now. You've got Elvis as a client. You put Elvis in these big stadiums. Then he gets a call from Sinatra, probably the next biggest name in business, right? And now he's managing Sinatra. So he's managing Frank Sinatra. He's putting Sinatra now in these venues, and I think he ends up in Vegas over the years. So he's hit it. He's become that player. You know, he's the A player. You know, like Grover, right? A book last book we did was on Relentless. He got Michael Jordan, which got him Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, and now he trains everybody. He just created that momentum with that one. From one big idea, from nothing became something, and from something he became the best.
Right. Credibility is an interesting thing like that, isn't it? It's like if you have a particular client, it validates you. Like that's why you need. You know, you're always one creation away from a totally different life, one client away from a totally different life, one idea away from a totally different life. Because if you land something that is a step 2, 3, or 10 above where you're at, all of a sudden that becomes your baseline. Like that's your foundation, right? And then so everyone that sees you associates you with that, and that's how you step up. And that's, you know, throughout the book, how he steps up. It's a ladder. You know, every time he does something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, it catches people's eyes, and he becomes the guy that can do anything. He becomes the guy that can make the magic happen, and who doesn't want to be around that, you know?
I have a takeaway here from the book that's funny. It says, I have a theory, if you act like you're in charge, nobody will stop you. Kind of what you're saying. It's just kind of a funny thought that you just act like you're in charge. It just reminds me of like when you walk into a building, if you act like you live there, they just don't even stop you.
Right. If you walk right by the security guard like you live there, they're not going to... But, I mean, that's you got to believe you're there.
You got to be careful to get too close to the authority figure, because once you're that close, you'll figure out that the person really isn't that big of an authority.
Right.
And you're like, okay, you're in your mind above your head, but you're in a game where you can play.
Agreed.
And and that becomes the new standard.
Amen.
The new, you know. So if you're always a little bit over your head, you'll start to have new levels of comfort and confidence. You'll be able to play.
Yeah, you kind of get used to or acclimated to the feeling of discomfort, being out of place. Because believe it or not, that's something that you can get accustomed to. Right. And you can start to see that it's, you know, it's not just, oh my God, this sucks, I got to go back and sort of mitigate this feeling. But it's, oh no, this feeling is going to get me metaphorical Sinatra. That's why I'm doing it. You know, and then John Denver's of the world, whatever, it accumulates exponentially.
Yeah, you end up with
compounds is probably the best word.
Yeah, I mean, if you build on it, it's a new domino. It's the new floor to the new house is your current level of accomplishment.
Right.
And be cool with making mistakes, because some of them, I'm sure he doesn't talk too much about them. It's not as interesting, but the ones where he doesn't do well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he bombed a million times. you don't have to be right that many times.
That's
if you're right big.
Right.
Aim big, when you miss, try to miss small and get home big. That was Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Optionality, high upside, lower no downside.
A lot of guys hit 30 home runs and bat 240.
Hell yeah.
But I love how he like continuously puts the pie in the sky. He sets the expectation so big. He agrees to things. Elvis being upset or Sinatra being upset, he agrees to a solution and then has the confidence to fill in the gaps. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah.
Because he spends the entire 90% of the book trying to figure out how to execute on the things he's promised.
Right.
And a lot of people don't think like that. I think that separates, different outcomes, different lifestyles. It's like you got to believe it and then work towards that belief.
Yeah, some people, if you want a big goal, your dream, you should nearly be embarrassed to show it to somebody. If you want it to be the correct dream, you should almost not want to see it. But you got to at some point you got to release it. Like, this is who I'm going to become. This is my message. This huge promise.
Right.
With the underlying commitment to make it happen. That persistence.
I love it.
Yeah. If your goals are any goal, I think he did one with when Sinatra was going to quit singing. He put him in. He didn't know it was his friend too. The boy, and Sinatra's cocktailing it in the Las Vegas casino hotel room, and he's thinking about quitting singing. He doesn't want to sing all these songs every night. And Jerry comes up with his big idea that he's a heavyweight. You're the best ever. You're the heavyweight champion of singing, and we're going to put you into Madison Square Garden. You're going to come out of a ring. Howard Cosell's going to introduce you. We're going to go live all over the world. Made it up on the spot. And Sinatra started responding.
Yeah. It was a positive thing. I mean, he was just getting bored with what he was doing.
Right.
And so, Jerry's thought process was, all right, how do we get him excited? How do we get him back in this? Because part of the thing too, and we haven't really talked about this much, is he's almost like babysitting the whole book. He's catering to egos and very emotional prima donnas. And so anyway, he's very good at feeling the situation, understanding what the person he's talking to wants and what will excite them. He promises something, gets Sinatra excited, and now he's like, oh boy, right now I got to go make this happen.
Yeah.
And he does. He does.
Yeah, because you get bored with stuff. I think that's the time when I know I did. You do something long enough, good enough, well enough, and you're making enough money where life's easy enough that you start becoming bored.
Right.
And I think that's the moment before you go off the rails and get connected to the wrong things, which a lot of people do. Certainly I did. You recreate yourself, you reinvent yourself, or you create a new interesting project.
Yeah. That's tough for artists playing the same set list every night.
Oh my God, I can't imagine.
Right.
I mean, we just saw, who did we see in concert? I just saw I saw
Team Bears?
No, I saw Maroon 5 play.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and he was off. I mean, he was visibly off. He wasn't himself. It struck me that he was bored a little bit.
Adam
Levine.
Trying to entertain himself, maybe?
He just didn't look like he was into it. Yeah, he looked a little lethargic.
I wonder if part of art is just being so emotionally invested in what you're doing. It's like a piece of you, and when you feel like you've chopped it up and made it a bite-sized product, it takes away the very reason you made it. So I understand you have so many artists. I remember we saw Third Eye Blind in Boston, probably years ago now, maybe 4 years ago, and people know them for their songs, their hits. And they go, all right, guys, we got some new stuff. Everyone gets up to go to the bathroom. It's it's funny because I get why they did it. I totally understand. You got to keep it fresh. You got to keep yourselves inspired. But I mean, here's the reality, man. People like what they like.
What was that? We learned about this because with our posting strategy. So this is for media. So I'm always trying to connect the dots. Remember you're doing it on one. You're putting new material in between two known materials, right?
Right.
What's that called? It's some kind of bias, right? Familiarity bias, maybe?
It's in The Power of Habit. I'm not sure the name of the bias.
Yeah, you put, if you have a good book and you have another good book, in the middle, if you want someone to see a new book, you drop your idea in the middle of two things that we know work. And I think that's a good strategy for posting. It's a good strategy if you're going to be adding, if you're in the restaurant business, if you're going to add new type of food. figure it out.
Yeah.
If you're a speaker, you're adding new props. I think you never just depart completely because you'll get crickets.
Right. Yeah, that's what Duhigg said that they do on radio stations.
Right.
New song, they'll sandwich between two songs that people know, and then it's all about being acclimated to what you're hearing. But
people get bored. I mean, everybody gets bored. There's another story about John Denver, right?
Yeah.
He was pissed. He's like getting bored. He's starting to make up problems.
Oh my God, this is the best story in the world.
Yeah.
So, long story short, he's getting pissed at everything. The production, where he's staying, just like creating all kinds of chaos, and really wants Jerry to fly out there. And Jerry, at the time, he's managing Elvis and he's managing Sinatra, and he's, putting it off as long as he can. Eventually, he makes it so urgent that, Jerry has to fly out. So he flies out to London to see him. And, he's sitting down, he's like explaining everything that's going wrong. And he goes, "All right, I've taken care of it." He goes, "What's the problem?" He's like, "I fired Ferguson. Ferguson's responsible for every single thing that you mentioned." And he goes, "Oh, okay, good. That's great." And so he's excited, and he, gets the band, and he tells everyone. And, there is no Ferguson is the joke. But, he's sitting down with them a little bit later, and he says, "You're not the kind of guy that would fire someone like that around the holidays. And, what if we hire him back and just kind of put him in a different part of the company where, no one will see him?" And John Denver goes, "That's great. That's a great idea. That's a great idea," and gets excited again. Again, the whole thing is made up, fabricated, but it's problem solving. I mean, this guy's a top tier problem solver.
He humanized John Denver, who's probably getting, you might have seen this in people, they just get bigger than they really are. They start like bitching about like the food garnishes and stuff like that, or not having the correct champagne. These are people that used to drink like rock gut vodka with.
Right.
Now they can't drink anything less than a Belvedere vodka. But he said he gave him because this is the topic of our next book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He gave John Denver a reputation to live up to. Like, you're not that type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think for two reasons, if I'm thinking of it. He didn't think John Denver is a jerk like that, because he really isn't. He's a nice kid from West Virginia. But also, I'm sure he didn't want John Denver busting his chops again the next time it happens. Like, come on, you threatened to fire me, because he threatened to fire Jerry.
Right.
That's what got him out there. Those are the diamonds that you get when you handle those high-end personalities.
Right.
Like, don't be afraid to bring someone down a notch.
Yeah. His day, he never knew what he was going to be in for that day. It was essentially putting out fires, problem solving.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the Martian in the sense that, like, there's always a situation, there's always something popping up, there's always something that's problematic. But he's calm, he's confident, and he's very good natured. And he goes, and even when things seem dire or terrifying, he goes and he finds a way to put out the fire, figure it out, whatever. And that's why these books, I think, are so great for entrepreneurs. Even if it's in our subconscious, we realize, we see and we read and we listen to these people that are constantly coming across issues and constantly finding ways to not only fix them, but propel themselves because of them.
Right.
And that's if you can do that, if that's ingrained in your head, that there are no problems, just challenges.
Right. That was in Grover's book too, right?
Yeah.
So the cleaner just takes care of it. Like, a problem's kind of like an opportunity, not a challenge.
Right.
They look at it differently. You're going to get, if you're out there and you're putting yourself out there, and if you're above your head, you're going to have like near business death experiences, if not near death experiences. And when you're calm, it's contagious. If you handle it calm, your team, if you have a team, you should always have a team, even if it's not formal. Informal, have a support team. We'll see how you react to trauma, drama, sickness, and handle it calm.
Yeah.
Crazy is contagious too.
Yeah.
It's kind of reassuring too, that, like, knowing that the problems we're going through now, looking back, will always seem insignificant. Like, everything that seems huge in the moment, as you grow and you gain wisdom and you experience life, you look back and you think, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I can think of problems I've had from first grade through high school, in college, to now, and it's like, I was going to throw up over a political science paper. It's like, who cares?
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? There's so many things like that. And so the problems now, they're really, if you can really teach yourself to take everything in stride, You know, like Steve and I always joke, nothing matters. It's like, just enjoy it. It's not a big deal.
He has a takeaway in the book that's similar to that. He says, let's see where it was. He says, as long as you're here, you might as well smile. And if you find something you love, keep doing it.
That's like beautiful.
That's basically our company, you know.
Right.
It's like you build your business around your lifestyle that you've decided to build.
Yeah.
The way you want to live it, with who you want to live it, where you want to live it, and how.
Right.
Like, figure out a way to make a living doing that. I think he and I'll bring up a point you made at lunch today, which I love, about your friend who's in New York, who's unhappy with his job.
Mm-hmm.
You made a really good point, but he was around people all day. You know, the guy was around the best people in the world. You know, these are people that are famous and everybody wants to be, but he spent his life being around the greatest people in the world.
Right.
At least the most popular. Maybe actually there were times he created a movie studio that went under. He did other things. He's lost money a bunch of times.
His teeth kicked in every once in a while.
You always do.
Yeah.
Talk about your friend that you was unhappy, right?
Yeah, I have a friend, really good friend from college who's unhappy with his job right now, and just doing the law firm thing and making great money, working crazy hours, and it's just eating him up. And it's like, my advice is bartend, like do something less intensive and just relax. There's this, I think this is a hypothesis, but I think it's, this keeping up with the Joneses type thing where you don't want to take that step back because of how it'll be perceived or how you'll be judged, particularly in somewhere like New York City where, you know what I mean? It's like the expectations are high, everything's expensive. And you don't want to take that step back, but sometimes you need to just release that pressure, take a step back. And what you find is that step back becomes a leap forward. At least I found that in my case, man. I felt like trash for 4 or 5 months when I quit my job. Like I just felt like, oh my God,
It's time to go. It's time to go.
You got to. There's nothing more important than your health.
I love the fact you told him to bartend, because I used to bartend. And we said, have you ever met an unhappy bartender?
Yeah.
Like, they were the happiest people on earth because they're hanging out, having conversations. They figured out how to make a living. I was in the Key West this weekend for a festival, and that's like the most sought after job in the Keys.
Yeah.
The only way to get a bartending job in Key West is to wait for a bartender to die. They have them for like 30 years, and they're really well paid, but they also are paid socializing. They're paid to socialize.
It doesn't look like a bad time what they're doing. You're right.
Probably the greatest advice you could give your friend, better than any antidepressant drug that the medication companies will put you on. It's like, hey, just go do something. Get out there and get a new environment and mix it up a little bit.
Right.
Recreate yourself that way.
Because there's a difference between being uncomfortable, right, in doses, learning from it, transforming, and then stepping back out, and waking up every day feeling unhappy and like dreading how you're spending your time. There's just no way where that turns into a positive. You got to adjust. You got to pivot. You got to take a step back. Ultimately, you are what matters. Right. No one's perspective, no one's criticism, no one's thoughts or opinions. It's you and your happiness. And if you don't take care of that, you'll watch life move right on by. Yeah.
I mean, still, I've been challenged on the statistic, but go ahead and look it up. The last Gallup poll, it's like 80% of people self-identify as not being happy with their job, meaning I'm happy with it, and then there's one I love it, and then there's one like it's okay, and then there's one I hate it. Like 80%, 8 in 10 people are below the acceptable level of happiness.
Yeah,
if that's the case, man, it's time. It's time to create something new, to get a little juice out of it. He said Sinatra got twinkle in his eyes when Jerry says, "You're the heavyweight champion of music, and we're going to have you come out of the ring." So he obviously connected to like Muhammad Ali coming out of the Madison Square Garden. Sinatra
got the wheels turning.
A twinkle in his eye, yeah. So what gives you a twinkle in your eye? Steve Jobs in his famous speech said, "What makes your heart sing?" Like, if it's not happening, switch it up.
Yeah.
Switch it up. He's done it a few times.
He has. Yeah, I mean, you can't have his career is a Swiss Army knife. I mean, he's
produced movies. He's an agent. He's done all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, he's pretty close, I guess, with Brad Pitt and. Oh, he's dead. That's right. But no, he's close with those guys from Ocean 11, and they did a joke on him. They were doing shots of vodka on a flight home from Europe, and they were drinking water, and he was drinking vodka. So he did it for like the whole flight. He woke up, and they put M&Ms in his pocket.
Oh my God!
So they have fun. They're friends. You can make friends. You make friends along the way, even better.
Absolutely.
Right?
And interestingly enough, they come to be more and more like you, like-minded, because you start to weed out the people that are not. You know?
Oh, of course. They won't hang in with you.
Right. Right. That's what helps you level up.
Are you talking about how to win friends and influence people?
Well, that's next. that's our book next. How to win friends and influence people. This is the Bible. So this will be our book for next week. The only book you'll need to lead you to success by Dale Carnegie. It's probably one of the most talked about books.
Staple self-help.
Yeah. And there's just absolute diamonds in that book on how to, be persuasive, how to live your life, how to be remembered, so many different things.
Yeah, so check it out. And we're going to do a few new things. We're going to have a call-in number for people to ask questions, particularly if they're about this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, next week. When we're going over the book and chatting, doing the weekly podcast, we'll bring up the questions and answer them. And
I got the number right here.
all right, what is it?
So if you guys want to call in, leave a voicemail, or you could even just text in a question, comment, anything you want to say. The phone number is 754-273-6069. So what you want to do is just give it a call. Any phone works, or a text, and we'll bring it up on the podcast for these guys to listen to and respond to. So should be fun.
Awesome. We can't wait. So anything else? I think we...
Yeah, I encourage you to call. You're going to get some free consulting. Anything to do with, sharing your message, what business models you may have in mind for how you distribute your message and how to monetize your message through media. So message, model, media, the three-legged stool. 3 ways to take your game to a whole nother level. So call in with the questions.
All right. See you next week, guys.
All right.